Hollow. What the heck? Did you guys see that? That was weird. I don't know what's going on, guys. There's a ghost haunting my OBS. Thank you for joining me, though. So Berlin buildings are weird, apparently, according to Hausman. Check them out, link down below. I saw this. It's got a lot of views. Sounds interesting. Why are they weird? Let's do it.
What you're looking at here is a 120-year-old photograph taken in Berlin. The buildings still stand, but today, the one on the right looks quite different. As you can see, all the ornamentation is gone, and what is left is a somewhat incomplete structure. This phenomenon is called
What do you mean, incomplete structure?
somewhat incomplete structure.
Just because it looks very plain?
This phenomenon is called Entstuckung, which is the deliberate removal of stucco from buildings. It happened all over Germany, and nowhere is it more visible than here in the German capital. In fact, you can
So that's why they're so smooth?
hardly walk down any of the city streets without noticing one of these odd houses. They are everywhere. But why?
I've never noticed that in any videos. Oh my god, what is this?
When the Germans began tearing down stucco, they never intended to remove it all. Many buildings, despite being covered in ornaments, weren't even considered. Strange as it may seem, there is an explanation for this. Turns out, nearly all the buildings stripped of stucco date back to a specific period.
I feel kind of dumb, but I'm just like, I don't know anything about building, man. Stucco, like, isn't that just a material that's used to as like a plaster type thing? Or something. I have to look that up so I understand what he's talking about. Stucco is a durable exterior plaster made of sand, water, and cement. Hardens into a rock. It's used to coat walls, ceilings, and features. So why were they removing it? I'm just a little confused. He kind of started this out like without much context. He's just saying, oh, they were removing stucco. And it's like, why? And what's underneath the stucco? Just that smooth material?
Nearly all the buildings stripped of stucco date back to a specific period, the late 19th and early 20th centuries. To understand what caused this development, we'll begin our journey in Dresden.
Hopefully this gives me some context.
By the mid-19th century, the Industrial Revolution had reached Saxony. Factories attracted workers from the countryside, and the population in Dresden exploded. New boroughs sprung up, and they took on a new shape. For one, the streets were different. Twisting alleyways were now substituted with straight boulevards. Moreover, the buildings differed. Industrial techniques allowed for rapid construction, but these, then new, apartment buildings looked nothing like what we today associate with mass-produced housing. Instead, they looked old. That is because they were products of a movement called Historicism. As the name suggests, Historicism drew inspiration from the past. It gained popularity for various reasons, with the most significant being industrialization. With more people finding themselves in rapidly changing and impersonal environments, the need for stability grew. As such, architects and artists began using elements from styles that harken back to simpler times. Gothic,
I think we need some more of this today.
Gorgeous, Greek,
It's not even that it's simpler times, it's more beautiful times. Especially here in the States, like there's a lot of very boring architecture, seems like. And whenever I react to stuff from Europe, which I do every day, it's pretty apparent that like a lot of it's just a benefit of your guys' long history and having all this old architecture that's still standing, but also it's, having that history of building that type of architecture. And a lot of American architecture is just like uninspired, very, very just practical. Not necessarily. It's not necessarily ugly, although some of it is, of course. But it's just bland.
Columns and timbered facades all re-emerged, not only in Germany, but throughout the West. This resulted in some of the world's most iconic structures. And, upon closer inspection, you'll notice something interesting. Many of these buildings didn't simply borrow from a particular style, but also began mixing various ones, giving rise to structures that could almost be considered new styles themselves. The term for this is eclecticism, which marks the peak craziness or awesomeness for this whole movement. Take this example from Dresden. At its core, we have a brick building, which is typical for the area. But look closer and you'll find Romanesque and Gothic arches, Baroque domes, and the most striking feature of them all, a timbered framed attic. Obviously, most buildings didn't take it this far, but you get the idea. Okay, so...
It's funny, I'm so ignorant on this subject, I would have not even recognized that it was combining all those different things. But that's pretty interesting to know that.
You had all these buildings using some design elements that were popular in the past. Where exactly is the problem? Well, just a few kilometers away from Schillerplatz was a young architecture student who was witnessing this movement firsthand. His name was Adolf Loos, and he would go on to become one of its most vocal critics, a path that would eventually lead him to Prague. Turns out, Adolf, this one, had a quite...
Now that's beauty right there. Not even just take away that mossy wall. I just want a flat, blank sheet of paper with some windows on it. It is interesting looking in how uninteresting it is, you know? It's so uninteresting, it becomes interesting again.
Different view of what constitutes a good building, and his designs leave no doubt that ornamentation was no part of it. In his famous essay, Ornament and Crime, Loos attacks his contemporaries from various angles, where perhaps his most widespread critique, also
it kind of looks like a jail,
commonly echoed today, is that ornamentation is disingenuous. Consider a Gothic cathedral or a timbered framed house. These buildings
okay, I'm blaming this guy for a lot right now.
Look the way they do, in part because the technique necessary to construct them is visible in the...
You know, it's funny, we do have enough German, there's some German heritage here where I live in Indiana, to where, you know, I'll notice now that there are some houses and some structures that look like this, you know, this German timber style. I forget what the name of it is. Hopefully he'll say. But, you know, the timber frame with the plaster in between. It's a really beautiful style. And there is some of it here.
Design. Gothic arches and flying buttresses made it possible to build enormous cathedrals. Likewise,
especially in the town of Darmstadt.
Structural integrity of these cute wooden houses comes from their frames. Therefore, Loos would consider these honest structures as they reflect local knowledge from a certain time. Now, our eclectic example, on the other hand, doesn't really use these design elements out of necessity. The frames are plastered on, and the arches serve no unique purpose.
Okay.
Therefore, they, like many of the other elements, serve a decorative role.
Okay. So I'm starting to understand his rationale. It kind of sounds like kind of a dick, I'm not going to lie. You know, he's kind of that negative guy, you know, he's walking down, he's like, that serves no purpose. That arch is unnecessary to the structure. You're just trying to make it look good. You loser.
Which to Loos renders them fake.
It's fake!
Moreover, since these are essentially...
That's not a real arch! An arch must bear weight! Or is it even an arch? No!
Cultural expressions, Loos also questioned their artistic value. Back then, ornaments were often mass-produced instead of being unique pieces of art. Lastly,
honestly, I'd rather them be mass-produced than not produced at all. That's my honest opinion.
He compared ornaments to wearing a mask. Not only does it hide a building's true function and material, but it could also be seen as a symptom of a society caring more about appearance than solving real problems, such as
Yeah, but if you go down that path too far, then you start not to care about appearance at all. And that's a mistake, in my opinion. You start to, disrespect appearance, and it's not something you have to recognize. It's important not to forget, I just remember being, especially when I was a kid, I always thought that, like, clothes were stupid. Like, trying to wear nice-looking clothes was stupid. Look at me now. See, I wear t-shirts now. Beautiful t-shirts with stars on them. No, I still haven't changed at all. But I do have a respect for, like, people who dress nicely and things looking nice, because guess what? We have eyeballs, Humans have eyeballs, and we use them, and we like things that look good. Do you wish that if you went outside and looked at nature that it was ugly? Like, no. Why would anybody, like, that's one of the most incredible things about our planet, is going outside and looking at the beauty of nature. It's just an example, but, like, is that bad? Is that a fallacy? Is it like, oh, well, who cares if it's beautiful, You should only care about its function. Like, how about both? It's my opinion.
or living conditions. Alright, as we now have an understanding of the essay, it becomes clear why its proponents went on to design very different buildings.
It sure is interesting history, though, and it's so fascinating to hear this, and then, like, hear that he was so influential that still today in Berlin, you walk around and you see buildings like this. I guess he was just so persuasive, That's weird.
Loos himself became a modernist pioneer, advocating for his own concept called Raumplan, as well as emphasizing the importance of craftsmanship. Other modernists didn't necessarily share all his convictions, but they too rejected ornamentation for the reasons laid out. The well-known case here being the Bauhaus movement. Eventually, these ideas began to
The Bauhaus movement. I'm going to write that down. Bauhaus movement. I guess I'm going to look it up real quick. What is the Bauhaus movement? A revolutionary German design school founded by architect Walter Gropius. Oh, yeah. Okay. Champion minimalism. Yes. Okay, I've seen. Yes. It's all coming back to me now.
One case here being the Bauhaus movement. Eventually, these ideas began to flourish in liberal Weimar Germany, and in addition to all the
Beautiful. Looks just like the prison down in the city center, I love having a prison in the center of the city. That's what it looks like.
new modern buildings being constructed, the first wave of stucco removal emerged. Berlin in particular.
So maybe, and I guess I'm insinuating here, or assuming, but I guess those ornamentations are molded out of stucco, or stucco, as he says. So that's what it means. He's saying that this house on the left has like ornaments, these ledges and cute frames and stuff made out of stucco. And these people were like, no, we don't want anything that looks like we put any effort into it, or that looks like we're trying to appeal to someone's eyeballs in any way. We want it to look like a prison, so we're going to tear that shit down. And then it was left like this. And hey, if you're a fan of the way this looks, then I have nothing to say to you except I apologize, and I disagree.
Became a laboratory, so to speak.
It is interesting.
As the capital and the cultural center of the Republic, it attracted architects eager.
And the reason I'm kind of passionate about it is because, in my opinion, we here in the States, we don't have enough of this ornamentation and intricate design. Our stuff is too boring. So, hearing this dude is my enemy. Whoever came up with this religion that, who cares about what you should never put anything anywhere to make it look good. It should always just have a function. That's not cool.
To redesign historicist facades. How many buildings they were able to transform remains unknown, but generally speaking, the first wave of de-stuckification was minor. This can partially be explained by its abrupt end due to the rise of the National Socialists. Adolf, this one, had a strong disdain for Bauhaus and similar movements.
I hate to have something in common with that dude, but whatever.
As such, members of the avant-garde faced persecution, and their activities were shut down. But perhaps somewhat surprisingly, the Nazis didn't actually oppose the removal of stucco itself. On the contrary, they sometimes encouraged it. There were two reasons for this. First, their ideology revolved around Germanness, which led them to view many historicist buildings as foreign and fake. Second, they sought to create their 1,000-year empire. By getting rid of ornaments and paint, and instead emphasizing proportions and scale, their buildings could maintain their appearance for millennia. Well-known examples reflecting this ethos are, of course, the Nazi megastructures. However, the same idea also applied to
Nazi megastructures. Now there's a reaction right there. How many people would click on that? American reacts to Nazi megastructures. Probably nobody, but I can't lie, that sounds interesting. Nazi megastructures. Did not know that was a thing.
normal buildings. In fact, plans were made to redesign entire towns accordingly. Take this example from Bohemia. Here, there are several modifications, and apart from the porticos, the most striking difference is the simplification of the facades. A closer look reveals that this is partly due to the absence of stucco. Now, if you visit this town today, the stucco is still there.
Yay.
These large-scale projects were
I'm pro stucco.
only meant to begin after a Nazi victory. This is why during the whole regime, Entstuckung remained a scattered phenomena, mostly affecting isolated buildings like this one in Nuremberg. What would be the true catalyst leading to widespread adaptation was, however, the war. As many German cities had been heavily damaged, questions about their future began to surface. One concern in particular was what to do with all the damaged facades. Besides being scars from a brutal past, crumbling stucco also posed a safety hazard. With no resources to spend on extensive facade renovations, tearing it down was often the pragmatic choice.
Now that makes sense.
Being said, this massive wave wasn't solely driven by pragmatists. Other countries, also greatly impacted by the war, saw no similar push. Therefore, one might speculate that one of the main drivers was German guilt fueling a desire to escape its past. If so, this could explain why Berlin, in particular, became the epicenter. Regardless, modernist ideals became dominant on both sides of the Iron Curtain. Thus, the reshaping of historicist facades to mimic clean, modern aesthetics was mostly encouraged. This would go on for almost 20 years before significant pushback emerged. Leading the revolt was an architect named Werner Duttmann. Interestingly, Duttmann himself was a modernist who had begun to question the rationale behind de-stuckification. In his view, the removal of stucco from historicist buildings was an attack on their authenticity.
That's ironic. So it's an attack on the authenticity, even though the removal was supposed to make them more authentic. That's the whole reason they were removing it. To be honest, it seems like some people, especially the dude who said to remove it all, it's just like a good example of thinking about shit a little too much. You know, like once you start thinking about, you can come up with a rationale to do anything if you think about it long enough and jump through enough hoops. But it's like, how about we just keep it simple, dude? Tearing this shit off to make the building look uglier because you're mad that people made it look good is stupid.
Buildings were simply
Don't need to think about it much deeper than that.
products of a specific era, and by transforming them to
And I'm sorry, I realized that, you know, like apparently a lot of buildings in Berlin look like this. So I'm not trying to say Berlin's ugly. I'd have to see it for my. It looks really gorgeous, honestly. But that movement in general just doesn't jive with me. What can I say?
Something else, they lost that historical connection. Furthermore, it was argued that because the facades were designed to be ornate, removing all the stucco made the buildings look awkward and incomplete.
Yes, it does. See, that's the other aspect of it that I was going to say as well, is that it just looks weird. Like it was designed to have that stuff on it. Like maybe if they had like not, if they had built them with like windowsills and like bigger frames and like different colors, then maybe it would be fine to not have the stucco. But like without the stucco, it just looks so weird. It just looks like a piece of paper.
By the 70s, public opinion had shifted and preservation efforts became widespread. Fast forward to today, and many historicist buildings are now protected. What's more, the districts where you find them tend to be among the most popular in every German city. Now, it is important.
Yeah, I mean, like, come on, no one's like going to a city, or especially like a tourist isn't going to a city trying to look for like buildings that are just plain. Like, wow, look at that thing. It's just like a flat nothing. Incredible. I love that. That's so cool. You know, that's why I came here, is to see that. No, you're trying to see the opposite. You know, people want to go see the Cologne Cathedral. You know, the amount of times I see that on TikTok and stuff, people going to visit that. You know, that's the opposite. That's the most ornate thing in the world. It's gorgeous. It's incredible. You can just see, you know, the amount of work. That's what people love, I think, is part of it, is it just shows so much work was put into it. And people love that. You know, it's huge. So much ornate intricacy. It's gorgeous.
Note that this is not entirely due to aesthetics. Historicist districts are always more than just the facades, as they feature a distinct urban pattern. Nonetheless, ornaments are once again in vogue. The city of Berlin has introduced guidelines for restoring these facades, and nationwide there is a rise of a new movement which is ever so slightly reintroducing stucco. So, who knows? Maybe the future of German architecture can be found in its past.
Cool. That was very, very interesting. Check out this dude's channel. That was a very high quality video. Only 26,000 subs, but that video has 500,000 views. I'm impressed by this guy. I'm going to invest. I'm investing in this guy's cryptocurrency. No, I'm just kidding. If I could invest in a YouTube channel, though, I would invest in this one. I liked that a lot. Check them out, link down below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys tomorrow.